The next generation of consoles have released, and people are asking a lot of questions about the controllers. Well, I have the Xbox Series X controller here and an Xbox One controller here. We're going to take a look at it to see if there's really any change to the controllers and should you be concerned. Let's go. The Xbox Series X has released with much fanfare, and many people are asking questions about the controllers. The main concern is, compared to PlayStation 5, the controllers for the Xbox look pretty much identical to last generation. In my hand, I'm holding an Xbox One controller, which was released with the original Xbox One, of course. And next to it, I have an Xbox Series X controller. Can you tell the difference? Well, not really once you're first looking at it. Both controllers are black, as we can see. Both controllers look identical and look the same, but there are some caveats I'm going to try to point out to you all so you know what exactly the difference is. For this, I do have a Shock Blue controller that I'm going to use for comparison. I'm going to put the stock black controllers to the side, and from this point on, I'm going to be using this Shock Blue controller to identify the differences for the Xbox Series X, and the black controller will be the Xbox One controller that we're taking a look at. So I'm going to hold them both up right here. Taking a look at both of the controllers, we can see that they again look almost identical to each other. What are the differences? First of all, besides the button that's located here on the controller, besides that button that's located right there on the controller, we can take a look at the D-pad. And the D-pad, of course, is that directional pad. They call it the D-pad with the up, down, left, and the right. As you can see here, it's just a 4-point D-pad, as opposed to the new controller. There's actually an 8-point D-pad, as you can see. It almost looks like an Xbox Pro controller, but the Pro controllers are about $200. But it does look like that. It does give you more functionality. It does give you more places that you can push on the controller. It gives you more precision whenever you're pushing on the buttons. What some other differences in the front of the controller, where you normally have the plug where you can plug it into your system, it's actually a USB-C plug now, as opposed to the micro USB plug on the Xbox One controller. The wiggle sticks, what I call, or the joysticks, pretty much identical, pretty much the same. And cosmetically, you can see that this is more of a flat surface on the Xbox Series controllers, where you have just a flat surface here, and as opposed to the Xbox One controller, where you have this piece here. Does it really change any type of functionality of the controller? No, it does not. The one thing I do want to point out is whenever you pick up the controller and feel it, you can feel the texture on the bottom of the Xbox Series controllers, Series X and S controllers, as opposed to the Xbox One controller. This one is more of a smooth design, and this is the original controller that came out with the Xbox, by the way. So there are no upgrades to this particular controller. This is the original one that came out. It's smooth on the bottom. As you can see, there is no headphone jack on this particular version of the controller. There is no headphone jack, as opposed to the Series S controller, or the Series controller. You can see that there is a headphone jack that's located on the controller, as well as other inputs, and that's just identical to the Xbox One controller, in fact. Compared to the Xbox One controller, the Xbox Series X controller actually has texture on the bottom of the controller. It gives you a better grip of the controller, in my personal opinion. In playing games, I realize that, you know, I like that texture feel. I just like the way it feels on the back of my hands. Most people say, well, Xbox didn't do enough as far as changing the controller, but me, I love the design. Xbox went with more of an approach where they were like, if it's not broke, why should we try to fix it? It's clear in the controller design. If I had an Xbox 360 controller, you could see that there's really not a difference in these two controllers, in the three controllers, in fact. They did make slight improvements, of course. Again, with the texture in the back, USB-C in the front. This button is still the same. The D-pad, of course, is different. as I pointed out before, the D-pad is different. There's an additional button at right here. Haptic feedback is a little better, but outside of that, it's the exact same controller. The one plus that I would say is you can use this controller, the Xbox One controller, you can use it with the Xbox Series X. So if you don't want to spend the extra $59.99 for a black or white controller, if you don't want to spend that, or $64.99 for a shop blue controller, you can use the same controller that you've been using with your Xbox One. And I didn't know that at first. I went out and I bought another controller, and I already had 2 Xbox One controllers. I could have saved my money, but I do like the texture again. And I like whenever I have guests that may come over, I can say, well, this is my controller. I do like that. All right, for controller button sounds, I know that may sound crazy, but the sounds of the buttons, I'll get it close to the microphone. I mean, you can tell that they're from the D-pad perspective. This is more of a muted controller, but it doesn't feel as confident whenever I push the buttons as opposed to the Series X controller. Both of them, in fact. This is another Series X controller. And the Xbox One controller. Maybe that's from years of use. Maybe that's from years of use. Maybe that's from years of just picking it up and using it repeatedly over and over again, the years of abuse that it took. And remember, this is the original controller I got with my Xbox One. Now, the PlayStation 5 controllers are different from the PlayStation 4 controllers, but I was not able to get my hands on a PlayStation 5, so I'm reduced to doing Xbox Series X controller reviews. The PlayStation 5 does have the DualSense, and I believe that is a different experience. It does feel new. As far as these controllers, as far as this experience, it doesn't feel like a new experience. It feels like something that I already know. So whenever I pick up the controller, I know where the buttons are. I know what the layouts are. The only odd thing is just that one additional button that's right there. That one additional button that's on the bottom. That's the only thing that's really different with this particular controller and setup. I mean, and that's pretty much it. If you like this video and content, please like and subscribe to my channel. Again, this is Patrick with Pat's Tech Review. Peace.